well, I saw Cherie today and she said she was gonna be here and Matt was running a little bit
Oh,
late.
okay.
But he'll be here.
Okay. You have a pledge tonight?
No, I was just beating the rush.
All right, we should be good.
All right, then.
Are we
It
on?
is-
Didn't we miss the first little bit last time or something?
It is 6 o'clock and I will call the meeting to order.
It got interrupted.
Tasia, would you do a roll call, please?
Yep, Lacey Oster.
Here.
Roxanne Kendall.
Here.
Cherie Ling. Bruce Belargin.
Here?
Lori Belargin.
Here.
Matt Foucault. Marge Ballil.
Here.
Our district mission, together we engage, educate, and empower all learners, bridging their passions to pathways to create successful futures and positively contribute to our local and global communities. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
I make the motion to approve it.
Thank you, Marge. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Bruce. Any discussion about the agenda? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I did not receive any requests for public comment.
Neither did I.
All right, so we can move on to item 5. Sarah, would you talk with us about the early college credit and Start College Now applications?
Yes, hello everybody, thank you for letting me join in. I'm a little bit under the weather, so I think it's better that I'm on this side of the computer than in person. But I sent over for your review the spring 2022 early college credit and Start College Now applications. Many of the classes that were requested were classes that have been approved in the past. I do have a couple things that I want to share with you. This year I am requesting that the board approve the requests related to any type of psychology course. As you know, at the beginning of this school year, our CIS teacher who taught CIS psychology resigned, and many students that were opting to take that class were hoping to do so with credit from the University of Minnesota. This semester, and until we have our new CIS psychology teacher in place at the high school, I am asking that the board please approve the psychology classes that the students have requested to take. In years past semesters, we wouldn't have approved those because of CIS psychology, but because we do not have that offer or that opportunity this year for our students, in addition to offering AP, this was one way that we were hoping to problem solve that last minute change in our staffing at the high school. I also wanted to kind of touch base with the school board. Again, our numbers for oral and interpersonal communication are high in speech. Every semester we see that. In completing these applications with our students, I ask them to, just to kind of get some feedback from them as to why they're choosing to take that, and unanimously they're all taking it for the college credit. I did ask if we offered a class like that at the high school, would they take it? And they said if it was required, they would have to, but they would opt not to if it was not required. I do think it's definitely a talking point to have, and Shannon and I have talked about this many times when we look at course offerings and changes to our class offerings in English. But you kind of universally, as I work with students on their course request, and Sarah Estes does as well, a common general requirement for both 2-year schools as well as 4-year schools is a communication class. And so students, are typically able to get into these classes through ECCP and Start College Now. And as a result of that, they are choosing to take it for credit. So, again, every semester we see this. And I would be curious to see the numbers, if we offered a speech class at the high school, if students would opt to take that if it wasn't required. But right now, the students that are opting and hoping to take it for early college credit and Start College Now are doing so solely for the college credit. And that college credit is not a requirement that's related to writing or composition. It's specifically a communications general requirement that most schools, like I said, the 2-year and the 4-year institutions are requiring students to take. We did not really have an increase in students requesting to take Start College Now. 32, 35 students is typically the amount of students that we see request to take college classes. So that is, that is kind of what's the word I'm looking for? This is a typical application year. Most students, even though they are requesting multiple classes, will only actually be able to enroll in 1 or 2 of these classes because of the college, I'm not feeling great, so I feel like I'm stumbling through my words here. They only are able to take maybe 1 or 2 classes based on the enrollment at the college level. And so even though we have students that are applying with multiple classes, they will not be taking all of the classes that they are requesting to take, is what I'm trying to say. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Does anybody have any questions for Sarah?
So we approve these classes even though there's no one requesting to take them? Are we thinking that they might take them later in the year?
Yep, so these classes, when I went through the applications, and Lori, when I am able to come back to school, I will get the binder for the board to look at when you go to approve. All of these classes were requested by specific individuals. And so the classes are listed on their paper applications that the school board has to approve and sign off on, and then we send back to the university as well as Northwood Technical College. So individuals at Somerset High School have requested to take each of these classes on their paper application.
Okay.
But it's only the classes that have a number by them, correct? I mean, the
Yes.
list is all the classes possible, but the only ones we're approving are the ones that have numbers next to them.
So the classes that have numbers next to them, that means that there are 7 students that are requesting to take that one class.
Right.
So on the Google spreadsheet that I created for you, every single class that was on an application, those are all of the classes that were listed. The ones with a number next to them means that 7 or 6 or 5 students are hoping to take that class. So on the spreadsheet, anything that is white would be classes that we would approve. And then if you scroll to the bottom, everything in yellow that I've highlighted yellow would be classes that we would not approve because we offer a comparable course at Somerset High School.
Okay, so if there's a class listed and in column C, there's no number, does that mean that?
One student has requested to take it.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yep, yep, one student has requested to take it.
Yeah. So, Sarah, how is the college in the schools or the early college credit psychology class different from the AP psychology class?
Good question. So CIS courses are guaranteed credit if a student gets a C or a better. So then that is guaranteed credit from the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities. AP is an AP college level prep class, but students have to test at the end of the year, and they have to score a score higher than typically a 3 out of a 5 in order to get that college credit on their transcript for when they go to an institution. So CIS is a huge factor, and it's a big motivator for our students because it's guaranteed credit. They do not have to take an assessment at the end of the year. All of our AP courses, you have to test in May and score a high enough score on your AP exam to be counted as college credit. So many of our students test, which is great, and many of them do very well, but it's not guaranteed, whereas the CIS class is guaranteed credit.
Well, yeah, but we're gonna substitute early college credit, the ECCP or Start College Now. So the psychology courses that you're asking us to
To approve?
how are they different?
Oh, sorry, it's psychology 101, so it would be just like a general psychology class. So the classes that students are requesting to take either at Northwood or at UWRF, those would be a general psychology 101 class that would be the exact same or very similar class to the students that would take with CIS psychology through colleges and schools with our instructor at the high school.
Okay, so,
It would be the similar, it would be, the same, general, it's a general introductory psychology class, which tends to be a very popular and highly, highly required, humanities type class that most students have to take if they're going into a 2-year or a 4-year institution or program after high school.
so it's the same difference then, they
Yeah.
just don't have to take the exam at the end.
Correct, yep. So these students opted to not take AP psychology, hoping to take college, an ECCP or Star College Now psychology class for the guaranteed credit versus taking AP psychology and having the test.
Okay. I had one other question.
Yeah.
You were talking about the speech and how you and Shannon have been talking about this. If we did offer speech classes in our district, could the applications for ECCP and SCN be denied unless they had taken the speech class the district had to offer?
Yes, so typically that has been our practice, that you are not eligible to take a class at River Falls or Northwood Technical College unless you have taken all of your classes at Somerset High School, and we no longer have that option available. So yes, if a student were to take a speech class, let's say their junior year of high school as one of their elective classes, if they, then opted to take a communications class their senior year through Northwood or UWRF, we would then approve that because they have exhausted all of their options at Somerset High School. So the school board is able to deny any class that we offer a comparable class. And then also if we offer a comparable class, we're able to approve that course request if they have exhausted all of their options. We have one student who I am recommending that the board does allow to take a calculus and a physics class because this particular student has exhausted all options at Somerset High School, and that is their next option.
Right. Did anybody else?
Yeah, so when we approve these, for instance, developmental psychology has 5 requests. But if, let's say that somebody can't get into one of their courses and there's space in that developmental psychology, can 6 people attend that class?
So it really depends on the enrollment at Northwood and at UWRF. So they have to go through their entire enrollment process first, and then whatever left over is offered to our students, first come, first serve. And so students typically will not be allowed to start registering for their college classes until January. And then once they get to the January point, we go through an orientation with the admissions team at the college of their choosing. And if there's space available, they are able to then enroll in that class. And it's based off of space. So let's say River Falls has 4 spaces in developmental psychology and 6 of our kids want to take it. The first 4 to register would be the ones who get in. Unfortunately, we are pretty removed from that process. Once we get the paperwork from students and then we get it from you and send it to the colleges, it is kind of out of our hands what happens with registration and orientation and actually enrolling in classes. We do our best to help navigate that, and the schools have actually allowed our students to take some classes even though there wasn't space. So they do try to work with us, but it really is kind of a gamble. You don't know until you actually go to the day of your registration which classes you are able to actually get into, which is why students request so many classes, because if they only requested one class and that one class is filled up, then they have no other opportunities to take other classes. So we encourage students to request 4, 5, 6 classes so that they could at least hopefully get into one.
And you don't often have, there isn't a time where students don't get into a class, right? That doesn't happen too often?
That does happen.
It does.
There are many students that will apply for 6 classes and are not able to take any because the classes that they have requested to take are full and there is no openings, because River Falls students or Northwood students, so that absolutely does happen, unfortunately.
Are there classes on this list that we should consider approving just in case that happens?
So students, well, what can happen is, if a student applies for 5 or 6 classes and they can't get into any of them, in years past, I have been able to come back to the board and request an updated application to be approved. That can happen if the board is open to that. The tricky part with that is a student cannot enroll in a class until there's board approval. And usually it's a pretty time-sensitive thing, whereas right now, I'm coming and I'm meeting with you and you're looking at classes and then approving 2 weeks later. So if we do that process, we would need to do, as a board, which we can, we would have to change how you approve classes because the River Falls admissions team and Northwoods will not allow a student to update and submit and enroll in a class that does not have board approval. So that's where it gets to be a little bit tricky, is a student comes to me and says, Miss Colleague, I didn't get into 5 of my classes, I can't get into this class, and I have to say, okay, here, I can bring it to the board, but I don't have 2 weeks turnaround time, because once they actually enroll, classes start within probably 10 days. So it's not impossible, but the board would have to approve, would have to not only review, but approve those late applications or modified applications, which can be done, but it, again, it kind of creates a lot of chaos, which isn't the end of the world, but a student will not be able to enroll in a class unless it has a school board's signature on their application.
Okay.
And Sarah, I believe we have done that in the past. It doesn't
Yeah.
happen often, but we have once in a while.
Yep, we have done it in the past, and we've been able to make it work. And so that is definitely, something that we can do. The other thing is unlike years past where students have only been encouraged to apply for 1, maybe 2 classes, we meet with students and even though there's, 72 classes that are, I don't know how many classes are requested on that spreadsheet, but students are in the habit now, we've kind of trained them to start applying for multiple classes to avoid that situation. I know there was a scenario last fall, Roxanne, that you were involved in, and that student ended up getting into the class that she needed to. It was a different communications class. So, we work with students and we work with families, and the admissions representatives that work with us, both Nicole and Jody at Northwood and at River Falls, they're super helpful. And, we usually can make it work. And so I think the scenario that you're talking about, that was resolved, and, that, I don't remember that particular student, how many classes they applied for, but if a student only applies for 1 class, it is likely that they would not get into that class. So before we even bring the applications to you as a board, we review them as counselors and say, okay, let's go back and try to find 3, 4, 5 classes, so that situation that happened in fall doesn't happen.
Yeah, I thought I'd just bring it up in case there's something we can do to help you in those situations. So if you have ideas, I feel like,
Yeah,
we should.
the biggest thing is that the board would, number 1, have to meet around the time that I need the application signed, so that's issue number 1. And then issue number 2 is that the board would have to review those applications and then approve them in the same night. Whereas now, we have, I have a 2-week turnaround time where I can present this information and you can act on it 2 weeks later. When it gets to the registration and enrollment, they enroll and then start the next week.
And hopefully we won't have that situation happen very often because you're telling the kids
Yeah,
to
yeah,
apply for so many.
and we walk through those scenarios with students. We do a big class prep, like we do a big, multiple class meeting where we have students come down and we walk through every possible option and every possible scenario, like to avoid that, sign up for these classes. And then two, like I said, our representatives and our admissions folks at both of the schools they're willing to work with us, and if we can find, a way to have them, get on a wait list until the school board can approve applications, they've been able to do that. But it's hard because when they're waitlisted, we also have to keep in mind that these students are also, I don't want to say competing because that's not the right word, but River Falls High School, New Richmond High School, all the other high schools in the area are also vying for those spots in those classes. And so if the university, is waiting, then we have, like I said, that's where the timeliness gets in there. Like, I can't necessarily have a student on a wait list if I can't get the approval within, 48 hours or however long it needs to be. That's where it just gets to be tricky.
Anything else?
Yeah, I wish there was a cleaner process to this, because it really is a gamble. And I know a lot of students count and really hope that they get into their classes, and 75% of them do, and they get into the classes that they want, and it's not a problem. But every semester without failure, there are unfortunately some students that for whatever reason, either they don't apply for enough classes, or they don't register at their registration time, and then classes fill up. Unfortunately, there are some scenarios that students are not able to take classes. We try to avoid that, but it does happen, just given kind of the reality that we're at the mercy of our colleges and the space in their classes. If their college students fill it up, unfortunately, our students they're not able to take it if there's not space.
Mark, was there something? you wanted to say?
Sarah, this is Mark. Is there
Hi,
any
Mark.
way they would take my approval until it got to the board?
Yeah, if that's something that the board would allow Dr. Bezick to do, because essentially I have decided as a counselor, but what they really need is the district board approval. The state statute says it has to come from the Board of Education. But if Mark could sign kind of on your behalf, knowing that it is a class that we would approve, then if you guys are okay with that, ultimately knowing that you would sign the application, then I would send another updated version with the Board of Education approval. We could work around it that way.
I like that. Because that would perhaps prevent students from not getting a class. I really like that.
What would happen if they don't get an application with the school board approval, they would end up having to withdraw from the class. So 3 weeks into every semester, the applications are like triple reviewed and the class lists are reviewed. And so if there's any student that is in a class that does not have the district approval signature from the Board of Education, then they are withdrawn from the class and they can no longer take it. So we could have a little bit of a bridge there if Dr. Bezick could sign it, but I would have to get board signature, and I would have to then send a third updated application to the university. Otherwise, the students would be removed from the classes.
Good, that gives us another 3 weeks, so that would be good.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. That's great. Thank you for all your work you do on this program.
Yeah, it's all good. Like kids really that take advantage of this love it, and it's a great opportunity for students. And so we want to make it work. So however we need to do that, we are happy and willing to make that work for them. And yeah, I'm very confident that if Dr. Bezick signed and then board approved, and then I sent a third version of the application, then that would work.
All right, thank you so much.
You're
We
welcome.
will bring this back to the regular session for approval then, and I hope you're feeling better soon.
You don't need approval on those the psychology one yet? I just remember you saying that in the beginning.
What's that, Roxanne?
Did you need
I'm sorry, I
approval on the
didn't hear you.
psychology course already? Did you need that ahead of time?
No, so these
Okay.
are all classes that students would start in January.
Okay, all right.
Yep, and also, just so the board members know, our current AP psychology instructor is in the process of being qualified and hired on by CIS. So next year, we are hoping to bring CIS on, but she had to go through a series of University of Minnesota requirements to become a CIS teacher. So this is just a one semester, our way of trying to kind of problem solve so that our 42 students that we're hoping to take CIS psychology, we're kind of not left without options.
If there is no further discussion, thanks a lot, Sarah.
You're welcome. Bye, you guys. Have a
Thank you.
good night. Bye.
All right, Trent, athletic staffing request.
Good evening, everyone. I have a few items here on the agenda coming up. The first one is an athletic staffing request. I'm requesting that the board approve an additional assistant baseball coach for the upcoming spring season. We're planning on having 3 full levels of varsity, a JV, and a C team. In previous years, we've run 2 full levels of varsity and a JV. We've been kind of in that in-between mode of not having quite enough kids to do a full C team, but not few enough to only do a JV, so we've done some double headers and called them C team level games. But based on our seniors who graduated and then our incoming freshmen from our youth program, we're anticipating having 3 full levels, enough kids to do that this year. And in order to do that, we would be looking to have an additional assistant coach added to the staff for that. I've included comparisons from the Middle Border Conference based on data from last season into that. The number of coaches that are listed there includes the head coaches in that total as well. So would be looking for approval on that.
Does anybody have any questions for Trent regarding the baseball coaching?
And I think it was 3 before, right? We just had 1 resign this year?
Correct, we had 3, we had 1 step away, so we're currently at a head coach and an assistant, so we have an assistant coach to fill, and this would be an additional assistant coach then, so we could have a full C team coach then.
So it'd be 4 coaches with 3 teams.
Correct. Yep.
And I saw the majority of the districts on your list have 1 more coach than they have teams. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yep, for the most part, yeah. Like Altoona listed there, they have 4 coaches and then they have 3 levels. It's pretty much like that across the board with the exception of 2 schools in our conference. But almost across the board, if they have 2 levels, they have 3 coaches. If they have 3 levels, they have 4 coaches. So where that comes into play is having an assistant coach at the varsity level dedicated to that varsity team.
So if there were 3 games in one night, you'd have 2 at the varsity, 1 at the JV, and 1 at the
Yes.
C team?
Yeah, and that's pretty common to run into that. So like, if we're playing St. Croix Central, for example, and varsity and JV are here in Somerset, due to the number of fields that we have, our C team would be playing over at St. Croix Central, or vice versa. If varsity and JV were there, C team would be playing in Somerset just due to the number of fields that schools have.
Did anybody have any other questions for Trent on this?
What happens if you don't have that 3rd team? If the numbers show up and they don't?
Sorry, say that again?
If we don't have the 3rd team?
So if you're projected,
Yeah, and we ended up not having one, then I would believe that this would ultimately, the issuing of an LOA on that would be contingent upon us having a 3rd full team.
anything else?
Do we get another baseball field? Sounds like we need another baseball field.
And
How big
softball.
is your backyard?
We get it all prepped out there.
And gym space. And in the auditorium, but that's a different day.
You want to go right into, so this will come back to the
Yeah.
regular session. Would you
Yep.
like to go into the hockey?
Yeah, the hockey co-op renewals. So this is typically it's an every other year thing that we have to bring forward to the board. I would liken it to so annually, we have to bring our WIA membership to the board for approval, which we did last May. The hockey co-ops is done every other year. So for both boys and girls hockey, Somerset is in a co-op for each team, and we are the host school for those co-ops. In order to continue with those co-ops, we have to renew that co-op agreement every other year. So this is the cycle here where we're good for this school year. This would be for next school year and then the following school year. In the memos, I've outlined kind of how that all operates. There are no changes to our co-op. The schools that were in each co-op are remaining the same. And we share the costs with those. It's based on the number of kids that are participating from each school. So for example, with boys hockey, we co-op with St. Croix Falls and Valley Christian School. If we have, just to make it really easy math, 10 kids from each school, we divide it by that equally. If it's more kids from Somerset, then we absorb more of the cost, but that's how the cost sharing works with that.
Did anybody have any questions regarding the hockey co-op?
Is there any issue with anybody else wanting to be a host school? Do we ever have to deal with that?
No, and I think part of it's worked out. On the boys' side, we're the only school in the co-op with an ice arena, so that's pretty cut and dry. On the girls' side, Amory's involved and New Richmond's involved, and they have ice arenas, but New Richmond was the host school at one point, and that was several years ago now. And then since we've become the host school for that co-op, some of the issues that I guess were going on at that time have not really been prevalent. So nobody has really asked to take that on, and we enjoy doing that. So.
If there's no further questions, we'll bring this back to the regular session for approval as well.
Does the co-op have anything to do with the coaching staff? Where's that coaching staff fall in? Does each school have a say? Or equal say?
The host school oversees all of those
host
operations.
school
Yep. Yeah, but similar with the expenses and the costs that are associated with that falls into the cost sharing between, officials, coaches, stipends, transportation, all of that. So those are shared. But the oversight and development of coaches, that falls on the host school.
Would you like to go into the athletic overnight trips?
Yeah, and this is I would say typically an annual thing. Last year it wasn't really a thing because we did not have these things outside of state competitions. But we have a variety of different overnight trips kind of in the works for our athletic teams for this school year. They're outlined on the memo. 2 for boys hockey, 1 for girls hockey, boys and girls basketball, and then baseball. The teams are responsible for any hotel accommodations or additional expenses that come along with that.
So does this mean they'll just be on the one night? So like if number 1,
Yep.
December 10th to December 11th.
Yeah,
They've gone December 10th, they come back after their game on the 11th?
Correct. The one exception to that would be boys hockey over the holiday break. They leave on December 28th, they stay the 28th and the 29th, and then they come back on the 30th because it's a three-game tournament.
Did anybody else have any questions for Trent on this? I don't remember ever seeing this many. Is this?
So last year, obviously, we didn't have any. The year before that, I believe we had a boys hockey, a girls hockey, baseball, and softball. Basketball is coming into the equation now because they expanded the number of games that schools are able to play. It used to be 22, now it's up to 24 for varsity only, so you're seeing more of those things happen over the holiday breaks now.
Anybody else have any questions on this? All right, we will bring it back to the regular session then.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The next item, middle school yearbook advisor position, Sarah sent us an email saying that she couldn't be here. Her memo explained it. Trent, or she said something about Trent knows about it. Do you want to?
Sure, I can say a
address
few
it?
words about it, and the memo's pretty straightforward. The same thing happened at the elementary school when the person who had it retired, and then we had to find someone else to do it on top of their duties. Same thing's happening over to middle school. So, it's just shifting the stipend now, so. I think it's a $500 stipend. Sarah's at her association meetings for the next couple of days, so she couldn't be here.
In her, I can't remember if it was in her memo or if it was in her email, she said something about posting it. Tasia and I were talking about that before the meeting started. We couldn't find a policy about it, but it is in the employee handbook, Part 1, Section 3, Item 38, that the position must be posted. And there's no requirements about how long it has to be posted. So we could still bring this back to our regular session for approval, but the position should be posted according to our employee handbook.
So can I make a motion to approve the middle school yearbook advisor position?
To be
posted. And then we can bring it back for approval at the next meeting.
Sure.
I'll second that.
All right, so a motion by Bruce and a second by Cherie. Any further questions or discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Okay, Tisha?
Yep.
All right. Superintendent goals, Mark?
Yeah, again, I apologize for this coming out so late. I was sending it out Friday, and I know exactly when it happened. I ended up dealing with a bus issue, and I have this in a different format, so my fault. I didn't realize till this morning. I asked Asia, did that get posted? And no, she didn't get it, so apologize for that. I'll go through it, and again, it's a draft, so whatever comments, things that you would like to see in here. The first one is a pretty basic one. Every year we look at the strategic plan results statements that we're going to be working on for the next year. Now, we've had to pause for the last 2 years, the 20-year school ended, we didn't have the core planning team evaluate. So we've carried those goals over to last year, and this last year, with everything that happened in the spring, I didn't get to it. The evaluation is now out to the core planning team and our building leadership. We expanded it. We're trying to do it electronically this year, and I think they're due, Tasia, if I'm right, this is Friday.
Yes.
So these may change a little bit, but these are what the administrative team looked at as far as the data we gathered and what we feel the direction of the goals were. The first one is measurement. We're looking at eliminating one. We've been talking about this for several years because it just, some of these as you go, the 28 results, some of them are real easy to knock off. Some we realize that things have changed and they're not really relevant. That's the one with measurement that we're just, we just wanted that to go away. Advanced services, this one will be on until we finish our campus here. So it may be on for a few more years or what have you. Educational delivery has several on here. Community dialogue, year-round scheduling, that has been on since the very beginning. The way we run summer school, it's almost like we have year-round school here, so we want to start some content, some discussion about how can we better structure that and possibly, blend this into a year-round setting. So those discussions will happen. Let's see. Then number 7, appropriate practices to meet the needs and present and future learners. That's really going to tie into the student achievement, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get down to this one. Engaging the community through partnerships, diverse opportunities, dedicated partnering with the community. And every one of these that are, all 7 that are up, usually has a captain for those. You know, so like I will probably be steering the one for facilities and the number 5 there. So that is one of the goals there. And again, that's pretty standard every year with, you know, with the strategic plan. The second one there is Bridging Somerset. Now, this next Wednesday, I believe it's Wednesday 19th, or is that Tuesday? Tuesday, we have a new group, new community meeting taking place over at the elementary school, and we're encouraging people to come. We've sent out notes to all the elected officials. We know that the village has their annual meeting that night, so that was a clinker there. But we're hoping for a good turnout to just run through an environmental scan, which basically what's the community doing good, you know, what are we not doing so good, and what needs to change. And so we'll collect that data, we'll form a core planning team, which will, you know, pick out the strategies that we're going to use and then develop action plans. And in between there, you know, let's just say we get 100 people. I'd love, we got 100, 150 people there. We'd probably find 30 people that want to work on a core team, and then after they do their work, bring it back to a larger group. Now, the Bridging Somerset I felt was really instrumental. Well, it was in the Rivers and Roads development. I think it was very instrumental in us passing that last referendum, and a lot of good things that happened around the community, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, as far as getting all the elected officials together. And that's the way that group started out. But Rivers and Roads research said that, you know what, there's a lot of other people that want to be involved. So we're opening it up to anybody who wants to come. And hopefully all of our fans here lately will show up and be part of that. So that's the second one. Let's see. Third one, student achievement. This is going to change. You know, we just got our report card for this year last Tuesday, I believe, and we got a lot of work to do on determining what these targets will look like, and it's going to go much deeper than that. You know, the last 2 years have been interrupted because of, you know, the whole COVID deal and the way we've had to switch schedules and what have you. But some of the things, and I can't tell you what the new report card says because it's embargoed. And as soon as it's unembargoed or the embargo is lifted, these numbers will look different, because these are 18, 19 targets that were on there. I just put them in there as place fillings because at that time the board wanted to some data to use as accountability. Well, so what I will say is some of the things that I was expecting to happen happened, and we're taking some. We spent a lot of time in the last week or so lining up some changes that we need to make throughout the system for more accountability. And I can't talk too much about it because I'd have to show you the scores and what we're looking at. But we're basically commandeering all the professional development days that are coming up to do staff development work in some of the areas that we need to shore up. So, and again, as soon as the embargo is lifted, you'll have it all. We can't share it until then.
Is that typically a December work session?
Pardon?
December work session? Is that typically?
Well, they said it's supposed to be the end of November. Hopefully it is. I think that's probably the latest that it's ever come. But, you know, again, so this is kind of soft numbers here with what we have.
So what does the okay, not good, average, what does that mean?
Okay. Those are just my thoughts. Nothing scientific there. Just when I look at the ranges and what I see, you know, that looked okay. Some, you know, there's some areas that need work, but
Like this.
no, actually, I spent the last month digging through all of our test data and what have you, and once we have this information, there's a method to the madness of accountability that has to take place that hasn't, you know, the last 2 years, it's been a balancing act between pushing people and making the system work just because of the stress that people are under. So that time's over, and there's some very sharp conversations that have been happening. So again, I wish I could say more right now, but without the data I can't. So the next one is long-range planning. I mentioned this once before, that as you look around us, this town is going to change. We know growth is coming. Probably in the next 3 to 4 or 5 years, you're probably going to be at a heck of a crunch around here for facilities again. So the time to start is right now. I've talked to Vaughn with Wold, who's one of the owners, and they'll engage in long-range planning with us, but typically if they are our architect of record, they won't charge us for it. So again, I've asked him, I said, well, let me know what it would cost and I'll bring it back. But this is where we'll lay out, what happens if we get 100 kids in the next few years, 200, 300, 400, what's this campus gonna look like? We've already been approached about the developers out here wanting to cross our land out here with a drainage line. Big 10-inch from back behind the elementary over to Larry Forest. But that's gonna come at a price. Do we want it there? Do we not want it there? If we, 10, 15 years down the road, you have to put up another building, how's that gonna play into that land up there? So the long-range planning will really play out several scenarios on how to expand these buildings, because that is the cheapest, because you'll have the infrastructure, you don't have to add administration, what have you. But some of these buildings are at their max right now. Middle school, be really tight to do anything. High school, we can add on to. Elementary, we can add a little bit on to, which would take care of the crunch probably for the next 5, 6 years. But beyond that, you're probably going to be looking at another building somewhere. And that's just a guess. But we'll use demographic information on that too to see what's the projections for this area. So again, that's another one of the goals that we'll get going on right away. The last one came from a
Go on to the next one.
What's that?
I just had a question about the one that you were just finishing.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the past, the board has been told that we have added on to our existing buildings as much as we can due to the
The core facilities.
our lunchroom space, our
Yeah.
gym space, our.
Yeah.
And now it sounds like you're saying that at the middle school and high school, we could add a little more?
No, I'm saying the middle school is probably just because of space there, probably not. When we looked at this last referendum, we did some of this projecting also. In fact, you remember there was another 20 million that was on this, and it actually had, I think, 3 gyms on there also, an auditorium and more classrooms onto the elementary and the high school. So again, just from my vantage point, I don't see the middle school being expanded. The high school can, if you expand, you're probably going to be putting in an auditorium, and when that auditorium comes on, that whole core area was going to be, the MPR and all that was going to be torn out, and that was all going to be commons area. So that would be increased over at the high school at the same time.
So that would increase the amount of space available for cafeteria.
Right, the ancillary spaces, we call it that, the kitchens and
Yeah.
things like that you need. So the elementary school, there's space where you could add classrooms, but there's really gonna be another gym there, another gym over here, and an auditorium, fix up the outdoor facilities and that. Again, that was in that other 20 that we didn't think we had the votes to get. So I've asked Vaughn to pull out the boards, because we do have those boards around from that last one. That's where we're gonna start. So I'm gonna start with some discussions with them, and we'll see where it goes, and we'll bring it back here if we're gonna incur any costs with it.
I think your biggest topic was that, I just remember the elementary school, you didn't want to surpass a certain number of students total in that school. In the middle school, it was kind of maxed from where it was, so it was, if anything, you need to add an intermediate type school or a second elementary school based on, how many students you wanted in an elementary school.
Because there's nowhere to go.
Because there's, nowhere to go. Even
Well, plus.
if you're up to 700, you don't want to end an elementary school with 700 kids.
It's just like there's an optimal class size, there's also an optimal school size.
You know, so it's funny you said that, Bruce, and I'm not laughing at you, but so my doctoral work was in designing educational facilities, and I've been in districts where, so take Fergus Falls, they honestly believed you could not have an elementary school of more than 250 kids. I mean, that was the rule. Go to Elk River, every one of our elementary schools is 800 students. It's what you get used to, and, you know, cost effective and what have you. So I've seen it both ways, but it's really what's the most cost effective to do what we need to do, either long-term or short-term. You know what, we do a demographic study and look at this and might say, you know what, we need another building out here. You know, when you start putting a new building out there, you're guaranteed 30 million.
I think the last time we did a population study, I'm trying to remember if we did it in conjunction with the village and the township and shared the cost, and oh darn, I think that was like 20 years ago.
So when we did the last Bridging Somerset, I proposed that, and I didn't get a good response. We would have been bearing the weight of that
Well,
whole
the village
demographic
and
study.
the township were not in.
Not at that time, so we'll see what happens with that, but that's always a good piece to have. And there may be some other entities around here that have done it already, somewhere over in Hudson or what have you, that we could beg, borrow, and steal from. The last one says possible goal, and this came from a conversation that Dave and I had, and because we were looking at updating the work Victoria did. You know, that was almost 4 years ago, or maybe even more than that. As far as her surveying, you know, looking at what all the area districts are paying, you know, their whole compensation program. She did that study for us. Then we started talking about some of the districts and some of the incentive programs that they had. And everyone's doing something a little different. We're the only ones that, I shouldn't say we're not the only ones, but we're one of the few that there isn't some variation of something that's going on for, you know, staff to, you know, gain some incentive. And I put this together just as something that, if we're interested in it, we can do some work on it. This is not gonna be a quick thing, this is gonna take some time, because when you do programs like that, you wanna make sure everyone, all your employee bases can accomplish something and benefit from it. In that, and I threw it out here to see if there's any interest in doing this. I do think we need to update, you know, our Victoria compensation plan, just to make sure we're staying par with, you know, the region. You know, we're seeing more and more custodians. Now it's in the bus drivers that we're possibly gonna be having issues with, that, you know, Dave and I are working with Safeway now to, okay, what do we need to do to help you keep your drivers? Because the last thing we wanna do is, you know, a lot of schools are telling their parents, drive your kids because we don't have drivers. So, I can race buses, but I can't drive them. But we have to look at some alternatives, and you know, the one piece I put on the weekend, I think it was just a note to you and Bruce. You know, sometimes, you know, these part-time jobs, sometimes we don't get a lot of people, you know, applying for those. But if we had, when I was over in Robbinsdale, our bus drivers were our custodians. And we were able to offer them full-time jobs, and, you know, they were good jobs, but they did the routes, and then when they're done, they're in the schools. There's ideas like that, you know, maybe we can work with Safeway to, you know, entice more people, because they've been lucky, and they know that, to hold on to the drivers they have, but now the surrounding areas are starting to pay a little bit more, and Vicki over there is seeing that a couple of her drivers are really thinking about leaving. So Dave's working with her right now to see what we can do. You know, I know Hudson, the school district, is changing their contract a bit, and it's something like we have to do with our custodial crew too, because we've got to, we don't want dirty buildings and we don't want to run out of bus drivers, so what do? We help them, we work together, and that's what we're trying to do. So again, if there's any interest in this, you know, something like this, be more than happy to work on it and put some pieces together for what it could possibly look like. If there isn't, I'm not gonna waste my time on it. Other things to do.
You mentioned custodial and bus in it. Are you thinking a little broader than that, than just what you were specifically saying, like teacher?
Well,
as
on
well?
that, this possible fifth goal was, no, that was just basically our employees. You know, so how can everyone from, you know, secretarial to
Across the board?
across the board, you know, be eligible for something if we meet certain marks. You know, again, if we were a business and we looked at our production, and I'm gonna say our production is our report card, do we have a successful year or not a successful year? You know, if we're losing money, it's kinda hard to give bonuses out or things like that. If we're above the board and what have you, you know, sometimes that goes a long way.
I think we should be looking at it.
Pardon?
I think we should be looking at it.
Well, it's more of a business model, but it's,
Well, this was one of the reasons we hired Victoria McGrath to do the wage study, was there was a system that may not be as broad as what Mark is proposing, but there was a system in place that had that aspect to it, and it created a lot of problems, and the one of the motivating factors for having the Victoria McGrath study was to get a pay scale in place where everybody knew what to expect, and everybody was treated equitably.
And that's what happened with that study?
well, and I think you're referring to, what was that, the additional compensation for, that was just as I came in here.
For the,
Educator effectiveness.
no, it was that, Randy put it in place, that, thing where you, something about a 4 and the
Oh, yeah,
bonus
when you were,
pay
yeah, when
and all that.
you were rated,
Yeah,
and you got a certain,
yeah, it was,
Stipend.
connected to educator effectiveness.
you got a certain stipend based on what you were, 4, 3, 2.
Right.
That one.
Performance pay, basically.
Yeah, for the
Yeah.
next.
See, and the different thing is there's no subjectivity to this, is all data driven. If your classroom scores are here and you're improving, you may be eligible here. If your grade level, that might be another level, your building level. And that way, you know, paras and what have you would all be factored in to this somehow, that as the system grew and got better, everyone benefited from it. Again, it was, it's not like an evaluation, it's data driven. So, I mean, the numbers are there with test scores, and, you know, we know we have people that are knocking it off the charts, and we know we have some that we need to help. So.
And Victoria McGrath would do that?
Well, I'm sure she would if we wanted her to, but what Dave and I would like to do is contract with her again to revisit the compensation model that we have around the, you know, around the area, so we know that we're on par there, and see what other districts are doing. And then again, Dave almost shot me with this because it's it would be a lot of work, but I think it's a way to, I think it's a way to incentivize people that, you know what, hey, here's a, you know.
So this is more than just a wage study, this is a wage study and a whole compensation process.
I look at it as a side piece, but we want to make sure, just like the salary schedule, you need to put money on the schedule every 3 years or so just to keep up with inflation. But, you know, in these times that we're seeing now, districts are doing crazy things with compensation, you know, as far as paying specialty teachers and what have you. And, you know, you look at Hudson, $200 a day to sub, and bonuses on Fridays and Mondays if you sub.
So when is the last time this has been looked at?
I think was it 4 years ago?
It was,
2017.
the wage scale was implemented in the 1920 school year, so I think the whole evaluation process took place over the 18-19 school year, and then it was implemented in 1920.
Didn't we do non-licensed the first year?
We took it piece by piece.
And then we
As
took
far as
team-
implementing
we
it, we
took
did.
Licensed staff the next year for implementing.
Mark, though, I like how you said this isn't like the pay scale. This would be kind of a side piece. So, I mean, I think that that's
Yeah.
important
Mhm.
to note. And I think as you're talking about just timing with Victoria the last time she was here, I mean, our economy has changed a lot. And I think the availability of jobs and need for those positions and jobs is huge right now. And I think looking at necessarily not like just those neighboring districts, because I know a lot of school districts that it's looking at, yes, you have your P salary, but what's another piece to look at that data, not saying, okay, you're doing a good job, you get this, but really looking at those scores. And I think focusing not just on have they met these scores, but looking beginning to end of the year to specifically look at growth. So not saying, okay, this is where we all need to be, but have we shown growth in those students throughout the year?
You know, hooking it to data, to our report card and our test scores gives me a lever. I mean, you want to hold me accountable to the data, to the numbers and that, but how much effect do I really have in a classroom? I mean, very little, except for trying to rally the troops here. And I just look at it as another tool, you know, to incentivize and to hold people accountable to. I mean, you know, again, talking principals, you know, secretaries, you know, there needs to be a piece for, you know, anyone in the system.
I think it's important to do.
Well, I'll put some more work into it if it's a, you know, I mean, we can walk down this road and we'll frame up a couple pieces and we'll just take it step by step if that's okay.
I mean, if she has something that she could kind of help us visualize, I get to the fact that we have a very limited chunk. I mean, we're talking about only giving people a percent or 1.5% a year based on our current schedule. That is, I mean, you know, so the max we're gonna give is 2% of people, and some people are gonna get nothing. I mean, you know, I know it says multiple years. I mean, I'm up for looking at something. I'll look into something and hear it and see, but I mean, I really have to be sold, I guess, on what she's.
Sure. No. And again,
Presented.
just want to see if there's interest. If there is, I'll pursue it more, and at any time it doesn't look good, we'll
Yeah, I mean, we can
either move it forward or
see what she
take
says
it off the
about it.
table. Okay.
I like this idea too, but I'm still thinking of those teachers in the gap. And if we're gonna, and I like the idea of incentivizing things and performance increases and everything, but we can't forget about, we still have to chip away at the gap, the teachers on the gap. And I'm just wondering, I know Dave was gonna put together where we were at on that. I know it's not urgent by any means, but I'd be curious what that's at too, while we're talking about all this. I'm hoping we can consider, give both consideration.
That's more of a Jody question, but I'll.
Yeah, and it's not urgent, but, I mean, just so I explain it for Matt and Lacey and maybe Marge, I'm not sure if you have been here since, and maybe you too, but there are teachers that are considered, and correct me if I'm wrong in describing this, but there are teachers that when that compensation study was done, there were some teachers that still have some ways to go to catch up in the steps and lanes, thank you. And it was never really decided what the ultimate goal was. Were we gonna try to get them at 100% or what? So there are some teachers that we're still looking at their salaries in hopes that we can increase it to get them at where they should be. So that, I know that it's, you know, it's confusing and sometimes it does cause a lot of extra work for the administrators, I know. And I don't mean to do that, but I do not want to forget about that when we're looking at other compensation too.
You know, again, Jody's been crunching all the numbers on it whenever we needed it. And I just see where she's at,
Yeah,
put a lot of work in.
Again, no hurry,
Yeah.
because
No,
it's
no,
nothing
that's
we need
fine.
urgently, but I just,
That's fine.
as we're having this conversation, I just don't wanna leave those people out.
How many teachers does that affect?
It's-
Yeah.
I saw the-
Well, it's fewer and fewer every
It's
year,
fewer
but
and
I think at one time it was probably 30 maybe.
I would guess
Yeah,
around that.
somewhere in that, you know, yeah, and again, it was when you went away from steps and lanes, and I think it was right at Act 10, where Randy had a new plan here where you had a number, and years of experience, and it didn't make a difference. Here's what your number was, and then every year there was, you know, some percentages or what have you put on either the schedule, no,
Just to your individual.
just to your individual pay, and then came in, the McGrath work with a schedule, and, you know, there was conflict with people being brought in with so many credits and getting put up here where, you know, their credits weren't counted, so that's been the move, is trying to get them back up to, you know, what their credits and years of experience are on the new schedule, so. Not knowing that we're gonna have to explain it.
Yeah.
I get more details for you
Yeah, I
so
know.
you can
I'm
get the whole
sorry to
history.
bring it
Oh,
up,
that's
but I
okay.
just wanted you guys to be aware that that's something we're
Yeah.
trying to kind of chip away at,
Yeah.
and it's.
Yes, I don't know where I have to ask Jody to see what the numbers are out of that. 'cause I
Dave
don't
would
know how
love
far
to
we
come
got.
present on that.
What's that?
I know.
Dave would love to come present on that for us.
Oh, yeah. That's another one he doesn't like to talk to me about, but that's okay.
Well, I do appreciate that you guys are willing to still have the conversation, so
Oh,
thank you.
yeah, I mean, this is, you know, it's up to you, you know, if that's the direction, like any of this, if it's not a direction you wanna go, you gotta say so. If it is a direction, you know, we'll get the information for you, it's not an issue.
Sounds good, thank you.
So again, I'll clean this up, and as of Friday, when we get all the work back from a strategic plan evaluation, we'll be able to tweak this into its final form as far as what we're gonna be working on this year. And as you go on a strategic plan, a lot of the stuff towards the end becomes low-hanging fruit because you've done so much work already on it that it doesn't, you know, tweaking it at this point in time is not a big issue. So.
Did anybody have any further questions for Mark on the superintendent goals?
Did the new building services person join us yet?
No, I gotta get him in here for a meeting. I think he's met a couple of you. Tim, I think Laura, you met him. I don't know if anyone else met him, but I'll bring Tim in.
I'm sorry, I should have worded that differently. Did he start till now?
Yeah, he started last
Okay.
week, and they're actually holding interviews tomorrow, or the Wednesday for the new elementary building tech. Because by the time we go through the interviews and 2-week notices and things like that, it'll be into the November before we get that person on, and the sooner we can get them on, the better, so.
Great.
Very friendly, very nice. It was a delight to meet him. I'm really glad that we got him, and I think that we're very fortunate.
Yeah, great.
Policy updates then. Matt sent me an email, and I'm sorry I didn't see it until just before the meeting, and I
That's all right.
haven't had a chance to look at it. So hopefully, as we go through this process with the rest of the board members, I can address the questions that you had. So let's start with the notes. The first policy in the notes was 1422, non-discrimination and equal employment opportunity. So Marge and Matt and I met Monday morning and spent time going through these policies and going through the options and the language. So the first thing that we had a question about had to do with page 1, paragraph 1, regarding conviction records that might disqualify an applicant or be grounds to terminate an employee. And I checked with Chris Patrigo, our Neola guy, on this, and he said this would be something that you'd have to address on an individual basis with our district's legal counsel.
So do you mean depending on who applied, or?
Yeah, and I wish Mark were here right now because this is something that, for example, if you are hiring a custodian and giving them the keys to everything in the building, and there's a conviction record of theft or something, would that be a disqualifying factor? Mark, we're talking about policy 1422, and it had to do with that same thing. That's the reason we added that policy in our September meetings, the one about background checks, criminal
Oh, sure,
background checks.
yeah.
And in page 1, paragraph 1 of this policy, there's talk about not discriminating against people based on a conviction record.
Is there anything that states anywhere talking about what that conviction record is? Is this felony, is this misdemeanor, is this,
I'll let you pull up the policy.
it doesn't,
Well, that's the question, right? It's dependent on what is the conviction for and what's the job for.
Yeah. And the policy is written very broadly.
right, I mean, it doesn't say, I mean, it says conviction record. So that's really anything they have, we can't really hold against them, is that what this is saying?
Well, that was our question.
Yeah.
Unless it applies to the job.
Right, you know, I'm gonna figure out how to say this. It would depend on what, you know, a lot of times in non-professional positions, you know, you hire people with various backgrounds, and you have to take a look, it has to be clear with the employer, like our subcontractors, that this is what we can tolerate, here's what we can't. And, you know, that's, because otherwise, if we don't say that, you know, a lot of times, you know, we don't put our demands out there, we don't know what we're gonna get at times, because we just don't know what we're getting. So we've had to make it very clear with our contractors that, you know, there's some things we can tolerate, some things we can't, because we're working with kids and public dollars and what have you, and open buildings and things like that, so.
So this is a discussion that Dave is, so this is a item that Dave is addressing through discussions with our contractors, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anybody?
But if in here, does it give us any ability to say what we can tolerate on a background check or not?
In
What
the
you
pol-
do based on position.
What word is
right.
that?
It's not in this policy.
Essentially, the policy says, we're not gonna discriminate based on your background, but there are limitations to who can be hired and who can't.
Where's the but portion?
It's not in the policy.
Right.
I think that part comes more with the job description
Okay.
and our contracts with our services.
That's where it has to come in, in our contracts with.
So can our contract outweigh our policy?
Well, it's,
Yeah, because it's not, we're still not discriminating against them. It's one of the qualifying, it's, for example, if you're hiring a teacher and you want somebody with 5 years of experience. I mean, it's not discriminating, it's just saying, these are the qualifications we're looking for in an applicant.
no, we had, just back up, we had a policy about DUIs when we were hiring anyone in my last district, because it got to the point where, what's going on here? You know, so we had a policy about, you know, what we would tolerate, what we want. And that was in our policy, because they were our employees. You know, here with our vendors, you know, they're at the mercy of us, basically. We can say who we want, who we don't want, and that has happened this last year. We had to tell them, you know, move these people out.
Which is why we're talking about it now.
So I'll make sure we don't get ourselves into trouble with putting something in a contract and not having it in policy, I mean, because, you know, here you can say we need 5 years of experience, but that doesn't say anything about experience in this.
No, it's a policy about discrimination.
Right, so. Still don't get how that's relevant to this topic. I mean, I just don't want to set us up for something. If we don't want to hire somebody because of their arrest record or conviction record, then we should pull that out of here. If that's something that we're gonna put on a contract.
This is simply saying we're not gonna discriminate against you based on your record. Might not hire you, but that's all about the job description. I don't think it's realistic to put that in a policy to say, this job equals can't have this. This job can't have, you know, this is simply saying, no matter what your background is, we're not gonna discriminate against you. But based on a job description, you might not get hired. But they're two separate things.
And I don't think we can take it out of the policy because of state statutes.
I think I'm tracking with you.
Okay.
That's why I'm not on the policy committee.
Did anybody
Just kind of
join?
reiterate
What?
that for the public.
Well, maybe it should be next week.
This is why I'm not.
You'll learn a lot.
Okay, now, did anybody else have any questions about just that one little thing? Okay,
Next
so
one.
the next item is also on page 1, and it has to do with days. And this is in every single one of the policies. So whatever we talk about here is going to apply to all the policies. And it may not have to be written in there, but we need to have a discussion on it. The definition of days. It says unless expressly stated otherwise, the term day or days means a business day. That is a day that the district office is open for normal operating hours, Monday through Friday, excluding state recognized holidays. So the question is, during summer, our district office is closed on Fridays. So would that then be excluded from normal operating hours because the district office is closed on Fridays in the summer?
What impact does that have on contract days then?
Well, you know, a lot of the stuff we deal with is time sensitive, and there's, you know, so many days and what have you, and, yeah, summertime we lose a day.
So do you think we need to have a sentence in here that specifically addresses that? Or can we just all agree that normal operating hours, the district office is open?
I'm okay with that as long as it's known. So if somebody came here on a Friday and had no idea that it's not open in the summertime, then we'd have a problem. But if it's known and it's posted.
So what we typically do is, you know, we put this out pretty well through school, other areas, now we have a post on the door, but I don't think there's ever been a Friday that I've been here that there hasn't been 2 or 3 people here anyway.
I say I've been here on Friday and there's been people here.
Yeah, it's, you know, a lot of the business crew they work longer days, but, you know, several of us are here, you know, just every day, because, I mean, there's just stuff going on, and,
I don't think
But-
we need to have any.
I would leave it the way it is right now,
Okay?
I support that.
because, you know, you got summer school, and you've got people in the buildings on Fridays, you know, so again, there's a lot of action going on around here, so.
Okay, then the next item, there was added language on page 2. The added language just was, the names, titles, and contact information of these individuals will be published annually. It's stated on the school district's website, but it was missing in the staff handbooks. All the other policies have that. It is in the staff handbooks, so that was pretty easy. Page 2, under the heading Reports and Complaint of Discrimination and Retaliation, paragraph 1, sentence 2, there was just a typo. Receive needs to be receives. Page 2, under the heading Reports and Complaint Discrimination and Retaliation, paragraph 5, there was language added to be consistent within this policy and also with the other policies. So that had to do with the, within the 30 days. Do you see that down at the bottom? So while there are no time limits for initiating complaints under this policy, individuals should make every effort to file a complaint within 30 days. And it says that in this very policy in another paragraph, and it says that in the other policies as well.
Where you at again?
I'm
Catch me up.
on the
Page 2 or
bottom
3?
of page 2.
Second to last paragraph.
Got it.
Any questions about that? Page 3, paragraph 1, the committee would like to strike the language upon request. We think that those policies should be given to the people whether they ask for them or not. Our discussion had to do with a lot of people don't know to ask, you know, for the policy. So we think it should be given regardless of whether they ask or not. Any questions on that one? Page 3, under the heading Complaint Procedure, the first paragraph, sentence 1, this is just a typo correction to strike the 2. On page 4, paragraph 1, again, strike that language upon request. And then page 4, paragraph 2, this is where there were 2 options. And we are recommending that the option, sorry, it's on the bottom of page 3. It's right above the paragraph that starts, the investigation will include, and then says ABCD.
Middle of page 4, right?
On my computer copy, it's on the bottom of page 3.
The investigation will include, and it goes A, B, C, D.
Yeah, it is right above that.
Okay.
So there's 2 options there.
Yeah.
Option 1, although certain cases may require additional time, the compliance officer or designee will attempt to complete an investigation into the allegations of harassment based on a protected class or retaliation within 15 days of receiving the formal complaint. And it says that that's to be consistent within this policy and with other policies as well. Yeah, it's up above, it says in another paragraph, it says 15 days. All right, and then the next part, and this is in many of the policies. So Marge and Matt and I looked at all the policies kind of together and tried to make the language as consistent as possible among the policies. So if you go to the top of page 4, it's right under that ABCD list. And the note that I have with all these changes is that the following 6 paragraphs have language added and stricken to be consistent with other policies and to eliminate the repetition of the phrase "or board if the matter involves the district administrator." So we just kind of rearranged the sentences so we didn't have to say that over and over and over again. So at the conclusion of the investigation, the compliance officer shall prepare and deliver a written report to the district administrator or board if the matter involves the district administrator. And then down below, we took out that one sentence and we used the 2 paragraphs that were already in the other policies. And I don't know if this was just an overlook on Neola's part for why that wasn't put in the first place. but this language is consistent with the other policies. And then the next few, it's just rewording so that you didn't have to use that phrase over and over again. For example, instead of if the district administrator requests additional investigation, make it if additional investigation is requested, the additional information that is to be gathered must be specified. So it doesn't matter if it's coming from the district administrator or if it's coming from the board.
So I'm seeing, I think, the original. Do you have a copy of?
These were all sent to you in an email right after we met.
Did you send them to the full board, because I haven't received them?
Yeah, 'cause everything, well, we're all looking at
Yes.
those, I think, those links. And so I'm like, this, I'm not tracking.
Okay.
I know it's a little tricky.
October 7th at 1:08.
It's
Huh?
in the-
October 7th at 1:08.
And I purposefully did not send them to Tasia yet, because when Tasia gets them and she types them in, then you can't tell what the policy
Oh.
committee is saying and how that's different from what Neola sent.
That's my question. I'm like, this is not what we're talking about.
Where's 4, where's 3, where's 4, where's 3?
So yeah, you should not be looking at what's attached to the agenda, you should be looking to what was sent to you in your email. So then you have the green and the red from Neola, and you also have the blue and the yellow from the policy committee.
Got it.
Much better.
I think you need to start over at the top.
No, I'm not.
No, we're tracking. We're good.
I'm not. You really don't want me to.
So right after paragraph 1, page 1, what was that?
So are we good with those 6 paragraphs? Is there something you want me to go over again there? Do you have any questions about any of that with those 6 paragraphs?
I think it's,
It was mostly just so that you didn't have to repeat that phrase over and over and over again. And to match the language in the other policies. So then, and that was it for the policy. I mean, everything else is just as Neola had it. And then so we grouped these policies together. So with 1422, 3122 and 4122 and 2260. They're all related. They all have the name, 1422, 3122, and 4122 are all titled non-discrimination and equal employment opportunity. And 2260 is non-discrimination and access to equal education opportunity. So it's kind of the student version of the employee policies. So as you can see in the notes for 3122 and 4122, they're mostly the same as 1422. And I think some of this, Chris may have already gone in and fixed for us. In 3122 and 4122, they all said administrative staff, and 3122 should have said professional staff, and 4122 should have said support staff, and I think Chris already fixed that. And then the 6 paragraphs, same thing that we just went through with 1422. And then page 7, eliminating options Q through U, that's the same as 1422 as well. But Chris had already done that in policy 1422, and he hadn't done it in the other ones. Because whatever we approved for 1422, he said he was going to put into 3122 and 4122. Does that make sense? Are we good on those? All right, now 2260, this is one that has to do with the students. And Chris inadvertently put in the current active policies into our drafts instead of the draft. So when our policy committee met, we didn't have these. We got them later. And so I just did the same things that the policy committee had already discussed. But we want to, I mean, if Marge and Matt and anybody who has questions about this, please, let's talk about it. So 2260 is mostly the same as 1422, 3122, and 4122. Page 3, under the heading Reporting Procedures, paragraph 3, the language was changed to be consistent with the other policies. So 2260, page 3. Okay, so that's just within the 30 days thing again. While there are no time limits for initiating complaints under this policy, individuals should make every effort to file a complaint within the 30 days. So that was the same as the other ones. On page 4, Abby's name was missed being put in. Page 5, paragraph 1, I had a question for Mark on this. I couldn't remember if we talked about this when we had met with Chris. There's a choice between the district administrator and the principal.
Try to find it here. What page was it on?
It is on
Five.
the very bottom of page 4.
Or the top of page 5,
Yeah.
depending on what version.
Oh,
Yours is.
okay.
Okay, see, now I'm on this set here, so.
Well, it's under the, it's after the, it's
What's it?
after Abby and Trent's name, and after the district website and the handbooks, and there's the heading investigation and complaint
Right,
procedure.
okay.
The 4th paragraph, the last sentence.
Upon receiving the complaint, that paragraph?
Yep,
That last
and it's the
sentence.
last sentence, the last part. So this has to do with students, and the compliance officer can consider whether or not some action should be taken on the part of the complainant. For example, if they think they need to move the kid to another class or something like that, to get them away from someone who they are claiming is harassing them.
You know,
So,
typically, if it's a student issue, it should go to the principal.
well, that's what we thought too. So that's what we were recommending, was to
Yeah.
go to the principal. Okay. And then, page 5, paragraph 4, adding a sentence, we were thinking that, add sentence from current active. So right now, in our current active policy, 2260, we have this sentence. And in the draft, Neola didn't show it as being stricken, like they were removing it. So we were thinking that it should still be there. Page 5, paragraph 4. Although certain cases may require additional time, the CO will attempt to complete an investigation into the allegation of harassment within 15 calendar days of receiving the formal complaint. So this is what's in our policy now, and it makes it consistent with all the other policies.
30 days to report, 15 to investigate.
Right. Okay, so, and then the
15 calendar or 15 business?
well, days is in the,
Already highlighted in
the definitions, so it's business days.
Well, this
You know,
specifically
even though
says
it's 15,
calendar.
even though it says
Oh,
calendar days.
yeah, but if it says calendar days, then it is calendar days.
Okay. So what if that happens over our Christmas vacation or?
We gotta get busy.
You know what? This was from our current active policy, it should just be days, we should strike calendar.
Straight calendar out, that would
Yeah.
make more sense.
Yep, thank you.
But again, it also says will attempt to
Yeah.
complete. So again, there's
Right.
really no teeth in this if we don't.
But you don't want somebody
No, I agree, I'm just saying.
coming on
we get
December
it
23rd.
20 days and there's nothing we can do. It's like the whole-
So we should take that out. All right, and then the following 6 paragraphs, that was similar to 1422, 3122, and 4122. And then we had a discussion about this one. Page 6, under the heading Additional School District Action. All right, and some of the policies, Marge and Matt and I thought it should stay, but some of the policies, we thought part of this sentence should be taken out. Remember?
This is the blue edition?
Yes, yeah. So under that additional school district action, there's only one paragraph there under that heading. And the sentence, any information regarding such instances shall be reported immediately to law enforcement authorities with the phone number and St. Croix County Department of Human Services with the phone number. And the reason we talked about adding this is because this is a statement directly from our policies 8462 and 5517.
Well, this is just mandated reporting.
Yeah.
The thing I was hung up on is the and, so even Wisconsin statute, it's actually written as an or. And I feel like, okay, if a staff member has an allegation reported to them and they report to law enforcement, but they don't report to Human Services, they're in violation of policy. If they do report it to Human Services, but they don't report to law enforcement, they're in violation of policy. So that's, I was hung up on that, you must report to both. It's mandated reporting, it's a no question, must be reported, but I looked at statute and statute is an or. But even with the or, like we talked about, as we get into the other policies, in some of the sexual abuse, I'm hung up on the or because that must be reported to law enforcement. So that was kind of our discussion is, I don't like the and because it really comes down to a trust issue with staff, and I'm hesitant with that, but I want to make sure that it's being reported appropriately.
So our practice has been, coach people, you report it to social services and our police liaison officer, because if they don't, they're still on the hook, if something gets missed. So, and I'm just thinking back of a few episodes or issues that we've had that, report.
So you would recommend keeping both of them in?
I would, just to make sure we're covered, because we want, if someone comes and tells me something and I tell our liaison officer and all of a sudden he goes on vacation, nothing happens, I'm still on the hook for that, because I didn't report it to child services or child protection.
Yeah, but it specifically says in here, law enforcement this is the sheriff's department.
In the same way, why is it a St. Croix County number, not a Somerset
It's
number?
It was the sheriff's department, and that came in a while back when we were doing policy 8462, because we don't always have local police available, and sometimes when it's a serious situation, we need the investigators who have more experience and more training. That our local police office, they don't always have the resources available. Is that
We've had
correct?
to use a count a lot.
And if Somerset is available, don't they transfer that call over if it's something that we can handle at a local level?
That happens at their level, not
Right,
ours.
but we're getting to where we need to be, and if it can be handled here, they'll transfer that call back over.
Yeah.
But if we tell our liaison officer and then Human Services were done, we don't have to notify the county?
Oh, no, per policy, you'd be in violation.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, immediately to law enforcement authorities. So if we use our law enforcement authorities, local law enforcement, we're okay, and the St. Croix County Human Services, right? We don't have to notify the county sheriff's office and the county services, all right there? I'm just saying with the number in here, that's the county
And
number.
that number was put in there on purpose, so it would go to.
So then letting But so then letting our liaison officer know isn't technically the right path then, correct?
Correct, yes.
So, yeah, and a lot of times these things go through our counselors. They're usually the first ones on. When something like this gets reported to a teacher, you know, their first thing is get to the principal, get to the counselor, and then the ball really starts rolling there. I mean, that's just the way they're trained.
That's exactly what I was thinking, like, that's who you go to, but then just to make sure, like what you're saying, that then both are covered.
Yeah.
So then who does that, the counselor or the teacher?
Well, it's supposed to be the person that the kid talked to.
That takes in, but a lot of times.
But a lot of times it
when comes
goes
to a
to the
teacher,
counselor.
you'll probably have that counselor sitting right next to that teacher making that report.
I mean, as a teacher myself, this has happened to me, and I don't go and call the police right away and call social services, you take it to the counselor. So then, as a teacher, if the counselor is taking that on, like you're saying, you don't wanna be on, you're making the best decision for that child, but who's responsible then for making those phone calls?
If I was that teacher, I'd be sitting right next to that counselor or principal, and that's typically what happens.
And I don't know, Matt, if this is different in Minnesota or not, but my understanding is that the person who the student talked to is required by law to make the call.
Yeah, and that's how Wisconsin statute is too. Yeah, if you're told, if you're required, it's an or, in statute, it's either one. And even it speaks to the or of sheriff's office, local law enforcement. You know, it does outline that, it doesn't require each one,
Right.
but you must make contact. But in statute, you're not required to call to notify both. So again, that was my hang up with it. If the board wants to leave and you know, Mark, if you're confident that that's how you're coaching the staff and that's what they know, that they will call both. Okay, I just don't want to see someone get hung up on, they called, this was reported, it's being investigated, and then it's later held against them that they didn't call social services. You know, maybe it's the case where the liaison is there, is involved immediately, and it slips our mind. You know, that's kind of where my head is. But if you're confident that that's not the case,
No, I'd rather have overkill than,
And Mark, maybe you can, I don't know if you're gonna have this information or not, but in the past, and I think, it even says this in the policy someplace, aren't we required by law to do training on this every year?
we, you know, we
I
just
mean,
went
you
through.
can train someone until you're blue in the face.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter until it actually
No, I
happens.
didn't mean to laugh about this, but yeah, we do, but just like this OCR that we did, I mean, so
Right.
much of that overlaps with
But we used to have a
complaints.
folder that had all of this stuff listed in it, and I was wondering if
Yeah.
that kind of.
Yeah, in a
documents
workshop
some-
week, there's always a refresher on mandated reporting, because we just had this come up a couple years ago.
Uh-huh.
But then I can't remember what the situation was, which makes no difference, but yeah, we always put a piece in our workshop about mandated reporting.
You know, and our counselors did all that work on that.
I mean, I think it's important, but I mean, if something like this is happening, anxiety and stress and everything, you have to go with it. I mean, I hear Matt with the or. I mean, I made a call, I talked to law enforcement. Okay, I don't, you're gonna feel like, okay, I need to be done with this situation. I know you gotta make 2 calls and that's what you want, and then we can go with it. But again, yeah, I would never want that to come back. They think they're done and they missed that.
And, you know, with counselors and,
Report
you know, and our
versus-
police liaison principals, you know, they know the procedure, you know, and it's typical, like, if somebody comes up to a teacher,
They'd be
they're gonna
walking-
go right to the counselors or principals with it.
Okay.
And they'd be walking them through that. Okay, so. And then eliminate the Q3U just like the other policies. All right, then the next one, 1422.02. Let me see if I can get rid of some tabs here.
Need a couple monitors.
Yeah, I think that all the time. So the first note, page 1, paragraph 4, the option was added. I think Chris already did that. That whole paragraph was an option and he already put it in. Page 2, paragraph 1, added language to the end of a paragraph. Right there. Okay. So this was someplace else in the policy and we thought it should be in both places. So up above in the preceding page, there is a paragraph that says, if genetic information about an employee or applicant is obtained in error, it shall be redacted immediately and not shared beyond the point of first receipt. We thought that same sentence should be in this paragraph 2. It says, if the district's employees or agents legally and or inadvertently receive genetic information, it shall be treated as a confidential medical record in accordance with law, but if it was obtained in error, it should be redacted immediately and not shared beyond the point of first receipt. Any questions on that one? Does that seem reasonable? But then page 2, paragraph 3, there was just, I think, a typo. The phone number should have been at the end of the sentence instead of at the beginning. And then page 2, paragraph 4, both options were checked. Because we do offer health services and we do have a wellness program. And I think Chris already had that included in this one. So any questions on this policy? And then 312202 and 412202 are exactly the same. But the same language, same changes, same options, everything is identical. So are we good? All right, then the next one is 1623. And this one is 504 ADA, prohibition against disability discrimination. Most of it is Neola, what Neola put in for changes. There were not any options, except in 1623, Chris had already eliminated the O through R at the end of it, and that has to be done to 3123 and 4123 as well. Any questions on that one? All right, so the next one is 1662. Yep. And there's 3362 and 4362 that go along with it. On page 1, that paragraph 5 was taken, added, and Chris already had done that in 1662, but we have to make sure that it gets done in 3362 and 4362 as well. Then page 4, paragraph 2, it's that same discussion that we had already had about adding in those phone numbers and calling law enforcement and human services. And then on page 4, there was a boundary option.
So can you go back? So
Sure.
this just has law enforcement with the phone number? Is that in addition?
No, let's see.
You didn't put in
Shall
social
be reported
services.
immediately to law enforcement.
Okay, so this is where we had
Need that correct.
discussion. And Matt had thought we should only be doing the law enforcement. But after our discussion with regarding the other policy, do you want to put social services back in then, so it's consistent with the other policies?
Yeah, I'm okay, I mean, if you're gonna, I think consistency is good.
Trying to stay as consistent as possible.
Right.
Okay, I'll add that part back in then. Okay, and then boundary invasions, that was an option that was already checked in this one, but we have to do it to the other ones. And then the V at the end was just eliminated. We needed to add the email addresses for Abby and Trent. On page 9, we chose option 1 to be consistent with similar policies. I think that was the 15-day one. Page 9. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know what page it is, I have it on the bottom of page 8, the option 1 about the 15 days. And then it's those 6 paragraphs again, after A, B, C, D, to match them with the other policies, so that we avoid saying for board if the matter involves a district administrator over and over again. And that was it. And then 3362 and 4362 would match exactly.
Yes.
Are we good? All right, then the last one, 20, no, it's not the last one, 2 left. 2260.01, this is the 504 ADA one. It's a little bit different than the 504 ADA that we'd already discussed. On page 3, we had to add Abby's name. I think it was just taken out by accident. Page 4, paragraph 2, language was added to be consistent with the similar policies. That was the within the 30 days thing. And then we had that question again about principal rather than district administrator, and we're gonna go with the principal here because it's students in the building. And page 5, option 1, to be consistent with the other policies. So that's the 15-day thing. And then the next part, same thing, the following 6 paragraphs after A through D, matching the other policies. And page 6, same as the other 2,000 that we discussed, adding that language from policies 8462 and 5517, where we're calling law enforcement and social services. And then on page 8, it was that it's in addition to being same thing as all the other policies, in addition to being on the website, it's also in the employee and student handbooks. And that was it for 2260.01. Oh, eliminate those options Q through U at the end to match. So any questions on that one? All right, now we're on the last one. Student anti-harassment, 5517. And a lot of these are very similar to what we've already been talking to about. So page 1, the option of that 4th paragraph. And that's consistent with other policies we have about offering the counseling services. Page 5, that was just a lettering correction. There's also on page 5, in paragraph, the first paragraph after the letters, that part about calling the authorities again to match those other policies. Any information regarding such instances shall be reported immediately. Page 6 was just a grammatical thing. They're trying to get rid of she, he, and make everything they have. Page 7, paragraph 3, option 1. This is the one where the COs will designate a specific individual to conduct such a process. We had talked about this with Chris.
We talked about that predefined list of investigators. Clarification on that.
Yeah, Mark, on this policy, 5517, we are on the part that is, it's like about 7 pages in. And it's under the reporting procedures, there's A, B, C, D, E, F.
Yep.
And then there's, in the 3rd paragraph, when you and I and Tasia had met with Chris, we had talked about this one. See the options? One was the CO designates and one was the district administrator designates. And you had said it should be the CO.
That's what we've done in the past.
So then, Matt, do you want to ask?
Is there, so it says identified a predetermined list of investigators, do you have that?
So which paragraph are we right here?
If
I
you
see
look
the-
under option 1,
So district compliance officers. So, Matt, what was your question?
Are you, okay, so we're on page 7, at least what I'm looking at, right, the paragraph right before the heading of investigation and complaint procedure?
District complaint officers, procedures. See, my numbers are different than yours.
Yeah, so find the investigation and complaint procedure heading.
Okay, got it.
Paragraph right before that.
Okay, the COs are assigned.
So kind of in the middle, there's option 1. The CO will designate a specific individual.
A predefined list of investigators. So how do we get the predefined list?
Process
Who's
is
our
identified and
predefined list?
predefined. So the question is, do we have a list of investigators?
Yeah, or what option should we go with?
Option two, will designate a specific process. So typically, what's happened a couple times here is Abby has designated who, because she has to look at all of the administrative group and what have you, who doesn't have a contact, who isn't
involved.
involved or have some type of relationship where there's someone completely neutral. And that's happened a couple times this year, so she's made the call on that.
Okay.
Because it has to eventually come back, well, no, it never did come back to me. But she's the one who makes the call.
That would be her predetermined list.
Yeah.
She knows who she's, based on the circumstances. Okay.
All right, and then on page 8, paragraph 5, there was another option.
The principal one. Consult the principal.
Yep, and we're gonna go with principal on there again. And then there's another option below that with the 15 days. And then we've got those 6 paragraphs again after the A, B, C, D, and those match all the other ones that we've already talked about. And then if you go down to additional school district action, we put in that sentence again about law enforcement and St. Croix County Department of Human Services. And then later, this is under education and training. The choice was a copy or a summary, and we have our student handbooks, so we just checked our student handbook to see what we're doing in there, and we have a summary with a link. So that's the language that we added there. And then, just like the other ones, we're getting rid of those QRST at the end, because we felt they were already addressed in the options above, and that was it. I didn't look at what time it was when we started. I have no idea how long this took. But I can pretty much guarantee you it was less time than Marge and Matt
Was this like 10 minutes?
spent.
I do have one question. When we met, you talked about Garrity in one of these. I didn't see that come up. Did you ever get clarification, and where did that fall in? And
Yep, Chris got back to me on that, and he said a lot of the same stuff that you had, Matt.
okay, so it should be in there.
Oh, yeah, it should be,
Yeah,
and it
okay.
should have been in green. He had no idea why it wasn't, because it
Because
was
it's
all
new.
new language.
Got it, okay.
He didn't know why it wasn't green. And there was another question that you had asked, Matt, something about, oh crud, I'm gonna have to go back to my email. Do you want me to do it now, or do you want me to?
Is it the email I sent today?
Nope, it was, I was gonna ask Chris some questions after we had met. Let me go to that email so I can tell you exactly. Oh, you were asking about, there was one paragraph in one of the policies that said something about may also be guilty of a crime.
Oh, yeah.
That you were asking, do we need that? And I asked Chris that, and he said, I mean, it's ultimately up to you, but he recommends keeping it.
Okay. It talked about, it specifically said in policy that, what to do with,
1422, or 3122, 4122, all those go
it
together.
was in those. Well, simply, it's essentially saying that if somebody violates this, they're guilty of a crime. So my question was, maybe guilty of a crime. So the question was, you know, do we need to address the criminal aspect of it in the policy? So if that's what they recommend, then so be it.
Okay. And that was it. And of course, we're not approving any of these until our regular session. So if you go through these and you come up with another question, or there's something you don't understand, please feel free to contact any of us or all of us, and we should be able to help you, I hope.
Can I make a suggestion on the one we just did, 5517?
Sure.
On page 2, under harassment, also includes hate speech, the use of language, behavior, and so forth.
Okay, hang
And then-
on, let me get there.
Okay,
On page 2,
on the bottom.
and it's on the bottom. Okay, all right, I'm there.
I would say examples are and not limited to, because it gives 2 examples.
Ah, thank you.
And that That language is on other, like
Yes.
under sexual harassment, that one also says.
Yep, you're right.
I saw it
is.
in here, but not limited to.
Examples may include but are not limited to?
Yes, yeah.
Goals may include but are not limited to. Thank you. Okay, are we done for tonight?
Thank you, policy committee.
Good
Yes, thank you.
I think it should be paid.
Well,
You find out.
Sorry.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that cannot happen until the next annual meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Topics for action then. We have a personnel update, athletic activities personnel update, and payment of old invoices. Would anybody like to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve 13A, 1 and 2, and B, 1.
12?
12A.
12A, 1 and 2, and 12B, 1.
I will second that.
Okay, so we have a motion by Bruce and a second by Cherie. Are there any questions or concerns about any of these items? Has Amanda started
I think she starts tomorrow.
tomorrow?
I think the start date's on there, I don't remember what it is, but.
Oh, okay.
Sometime this week.
Effective 10/12.
Tomorrow, all right. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Once around the table, Roxanne, would you like to begin tonight?
Sure, I just wanted to mention in the last agenda there were 3 donations given to the school, and I just wanted to say thank you. They were to the middle school band and for middle school football uniforms. And I forgot to mention that, so thank you to those who donated that.
Thank you, Policy Committee. You're doing a great job, and thanks for getting us on the right page so we knew where you were talking about changes.
Nothing.
All right, I'm good. I did have a brief discussion with Mark about your ones around the table last time about the Prairie Project, and that is moving forward.
Oh,
And
good.
we may have something for our November work session.
Awesome.
That's all I can think of right now.
No, I'll just say that the last week here, I spent some time meeting with Mark and the principals in all the buildings, just to try to understand where they're at and where they've been with the board and where the board should go forward. And, you know, as a parent, I kind of look at, I trust the administrators, eventually with my kids in the buildings, and in this role, I hope that I can earn their trust and support. So, you know, I just want to say that I'm grateful for the principals in each of the buildings. And as we go forward, just look at that weekend update, you know, we got conferences coming up. I would like to revisit, I think it's policy 6432, just in regards to allowing each of the administrators in the buildings to provide food or, you know, whatever it is they need to really show their support to their staff in the building. I think that's the policy. I asked the agent for it, I think that's what she gave me, I can verify it. So however I can push to get that on the agenda for a future meeting, I would like to. And just to really make sure that we're showing our support and trust in each of those administrators. That's it.
Can we get through the drafts first?
Well,
Is that all right?
I think it's worth just revisiting it. You know, as a new board member, you know, I wasn't part of that policy change, so I would like to take the few minutes and revisit it. And if we don't need to change it, then that's fine. So I'd rather do it before we're done.
Before we're done. Marge?
No.
Okay.
Lacey.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't have anything else.
I purposely started with
No,
Roxanne.
so I didn't have to be first.
Yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
All right. right, then, I will make a motion to adjourn into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.851C to consider the employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of a public employee. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Matt. This is a roll call vote. Lacey?
Yes.
Roxanne?
Yes.
Yes.
Bruce?
Yes.
Myself, yes.
Yes.
So she
Okay.
starts with Lacey this time.
We are now in closed session then. In just a minute, so if anybody wants to go get a drink or something.